Hi, yeah. I got a comment on one of my videos saying, could you give a bit more information about shell voicings? And I thought, well, shell voicings have been so useful to me over the years that I couldn't possibly have a YouTube video and not make a video about them. If there's only, even if there's only one person in the world who doesn't know what they are, they're super useful. So, what are shell voicings? So, shell voicings are basically they're the kind of voicings you might hear in the left hand of a piano, and they're often very, very simple. You know, left hand of a bebop pianist like Bud Powell or somebody. You know, often they're very simple. In the simplest form, it could just be a third. But I think as it's generally understood on the guitar, you generally have a third and a seventh as well as a root note, and that means that you're missing out one of the notes of the seventh chord, or it could be the root, third, and sixth. That's the other option. So we're going to crunch through the basic options very quickly. I don't like to give out chord diagrams of these things because I think it's better if you work them out yourself. You know, so here's the A shape. So the root note is on an A string, and this is, I find mostly the A and the E shape to be most useful. Maybe the shape of the root on the B string for inverted seventh chords. We'll go into those in a second. So yeah, so you've got a major seventh there, right? And this is the shape that I want you to know. I'll probably put it up on the screen as a box. So you've got root, third, seventh, and they're all natural to the major scale. Now, by missing out the fifth, we don't lose too much of the sound of that chord. I mean, I could play the fifth in there if I change my shape to this. You can hear that's a bit thicker, but actually it's not necessary. And what I would then ask people to do is, remembering that the order of the notes in this particular chord shape go root, third, seventh, is to start to make first of all a dominant chord by flattening the seventh. So that's that note there, going down by a half step, and then maybe flattening the third to get a minor seven. You could make the seventh major again to get a minor major seventh, and then so you've got these three basic sounds: major seventh, dominant, minor seventh, and the minor seventh will also be a minor 7 flat 5 because we're not actually including the fifth. If we did, it might sound like that. So we're leaving the fifth out. And then our next one is a minor 6. So we're just going to make that flat 7 flat again by 1 to make it into a major 6th, and we've got the minor 6th, which is, for me, a better like root tonic major, tonic minor sound. I don't like the minor 7th for that application. So, I just get you to go through, crunch through these different options, get used to them, and maybe test yourself by going, okay, what's a minor 7? And then trying to get back to a major 7 or something. Okay, it's really important that you do that yourself, I think. Okay, so I'm going to go to a G major 7th now. And the reason why I'm going to do a G major 7th and not another voicing of the C major is I just want you to see how these two chords relate. Those middle voices barely move, right? In fact, there's only one note different, which is a note on the D string, the fourth string. It goes down by a whole step. In this case, F sharp to E. It's what we call tight voice leading. The top note stays the same. So that's one useful thing about these. Now the G shape, or sorry, should I say the E shape with my first finger putting the root G on the E string, goes 1, 7, 3. So it's a mixed up order. It's different. So again, we flat the 7th to make it dominant, flat the 3rd to make a minor 7 flat 5 or a minor 7 sound, and then minor 6 like that by putting the flat 7 down again. Once you've got the hang of that, then the next thing is to comp through some standards, so something like Autumn Leaves, for instance, which is literally the first lesson, sorry, I did a beat there, literally the first lesson I ever got from Dave Cliff. Well, I didn't get many lessons from him, which was stupid. It's basically that, right? Playing through Autumn Leaves for shell voicings. And you can hear how good it sounds. And, even just that. This is great. So, there's a quick word about these chord voicings. So you've got the major 7th, of course. I mean, that could be a major 7 sharp 5. There's no 5th in it. You don't know that it isn't all flat 5. We normally call that a sharp 11th. G7, G minor 7th could also be G minor 7 flat 5. There's no fifth in it, so there's no way to tell. Minor sixth could also be a diminished seventh chord. Same with that one. So there's a bit of an ambiguity, right? So once that's done, you might want to explore the sixths. The sixths are kind of a bit more old school. They're very useful for Freddie Green type stuff. So, for instance, if we have, let's put our G major seventh shape up here. We flatten our seventh by 2 half steps, or 1 whole step, and we get B flat sixth. Now, the interesting thing about B flat sixth is actually, without the fifth, it's an inversion of G minor, first inversion of G minor triad, right? Same way, that G minor sixth is actually a first inversion triad of E diminished triad, right? So that's kind of interesting as well, I think. And you'll find like little similarities, for instance, that B flat major sixth looks very much like E flat major seventh with a different bass note, right? Also that, if I do that, that's D7, but if I put my finger there, then it becomes G minor sixth, right? Or if you add a flat ninth, it becomes G full diminished. So little patterns like that are great because they can teach you, if you're alert to them, the fretboard geometry can teach you about substitutions that are useful. It's useful to know that you can play G diminished seventh over D7. It's useful to know that you can play B flat sixth over E flat major seventh. It's useful to know that you can play, you know, that there's a relationship between G minor sixth and C7. That's all useful stuff. So I'm going to tell you all of those. I think you should just explore yourself. Use your brain and use your ears and see what works. Okay? I mean, just things like this. Like, this could be, what's that? I mean, that could be like F minor triad, or it could be a D flat major seventh, or it could be A flat major sixth, or it could be, it could be actually a D half diminished in inversion. There's an ambiguity about these shapes, but you can get good voice tuning out of them. Just there's a lot to explore because these shapes are very simple. A friend of mine once said they found it very freeing to be using such simple shapes. So I think that's really important to sort of bear in mind. I'm sorry, something just came up on my phone and my hand went really big. Whoa, look at that. Scary. Right, so, so I think take some time and play around with those, play them through songs. Now, there's a lot we can do with these. One classic move is just to go, use that kind of Joe Pass thing where you go, you're using a bass note to do that, to sort of create an impression of a walking bass line. So I'm taking a note 1 fret below each time, and then I'm playing the chords on the and. So I'm going 1, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, like that, right? It's a little accompaniment cliche that a lot of people use, or you could use them to. Like Pete Bernstein is actually a really great user of these chords. If you watch his sort of performances, you'll see him use these chord forms a lot, and the reason why is that they're very useful. Great for rhythm guitar too. Now we can start to extend them a little bit by putting top notes on top, by which I mean either notes that belong to the chord already. So for instance, we could take this C major and just put an extra third on top to make a more full major seventh sound, but one which still doesn't, by the way, contain the fifth. It's got double third, seventh and root. Or we could actually put a note that isn't yet in the chord, such as a ninth, making it into a major ninth. You probably already know that shape. It's just a shell voicing plus a note. Okay? We could do a 13th. So you might already have more familiarity with these shapes than you think already. I mean, if you know this chord shape, then you basically got a shell voicing with a sharp 9 on top. Put down the key of C, C7 sharp 9, right? If I wanted to make a major 7 sharp 9, I would take the 7th, move it up by a half step. Major 7 sharp 9, you get it in a few tunes. What's that Wayne Shorter tune with the C minor D flat thing in it? Can't remember the name of it. Anyway, you can do it in that tune. Okay, so or D minor sixth, sorry, D major, sorry, C major sixth, sharp 9. That's an interesting voicing. Right, okay, so I mean, all of these voicings for dominance, There's obviously fewer voicings for major. You don't see that one very often. People normally play something like this. It's a bit prettier. Okay, and so on. And for the other shape, let's go back to G. For the major, got major 13th, major 9th, major, both of them together. Major 7th with a 5th on top. And you've got the flat sharp 11th. Actually, if we go back to the other one, for the sharp 11th, you can get a voicing like that by playing the major 9th voicing and then varying your first finger. So you can see that these chords are extendable. Obviously, half diminished is like if you just take a minor 7 shell voicing and put a flat 5 on top of it, you get that. What about sharp 5? That's a good sound. It suggests an inverted F major 9 sort of sound to me. Just my ears, I think. And then things like, obviously we've got the minor 6 shape like that with the 5th on top, which gypsy jazzers will be familiar with, but also if you flat the 5, you've got the an RE finger like that, you've got the diminished 7th. So that's a useful shape too. Now you'll notice that all of these kind of put the root on the bottom, and that in general is the most useful use of chords when you're accompanying, particularly in duo and so on. If you want to miss out the root, which is sometimes an idea with a bass player, you might want to just play the middle voice that's like that. There's a few things you can do, like voice leading wise. So for instance, I can put, if I wanted to have a pedal point on the top of my chords, I could do that like that, for instance, and then finally resolve here to the minor 6, right? So, or I could do contrary motion. And maybe we could go back to you remember this voicing? A little bit awkward with all the fingers, all the notes, but you could do that maybe, so we get this. It's quite nice. And then you can add extra notes on top. That's another, then we could do this. And then maybe this. Minor major 7th with a 6th on top. Interesting voicing. So, you can get a lot of ideas. They're a rich source of ideas just by doing that. And the other thing you can do is, you've got another 2 possibilities, I guess. Well, I suppose if you go through all the different combinations of inversions for any 7th chord, you've got 4 possibilities, or any 6th chord. So you've got this. If we put the root on the bottom, that becomes a 2nd inversion chord. That's obviously we put the root up there, that become a 2nd inversion like that. And if we put both the root and the 5th down together, we get this nice voicing which I like a lot, which is the drop 2 voicing, in fact, but second inversion, C major 7th, very strong voicing, especially with bass. You get that sort of very big sound with it. Now there's a couple of other things. Like one of the most common alternatives is actually to have a shape with the root on the B string. So if I take this in the case of C major, now this is pretty much useless for major 7th chords. Nobody wants to hear a major 7th chord in 3rd inversion unless it's over a pedal point. So this is but most familiar perhaps as a dominant shape. So there you've got the tritone in the bottom. So if I move that up to, I don't know, here, and put the root on top, you can add a 13th there, which is a commonly known jazz grip. That's a 3rd inversion dominant 7th with a 13 added in the middle voice, or you can just do that, which is also known as the Lydian voicing. That's basically a triad on top of the flat 7th, but they're all based on that sort of inverted shell. This chord as well. you know, that. And, you know, you can do the same thing down here. So, for instance, if we've got the C7, I can go C's there, right? So, sorry, there we go. That's a dominant 7th chord. If I wanted to add the 13th in, could do there, but perhaps with this it might be better to add in the extra notes on top, so maybe we put a sharp 11th in there. Okay, and again, these are quite useful because you can go, you know, you can sort of. They're most useful, I think, for dominants. I think the third inversion is only really something I hear with the dominant. So, for instance, if we're playing I Remember You, so, and we can go to, you know, for that. So the tune example that I was using in my Comping for Yourself video. And you can also put a third on the bottom. So in general, if I put a third on the bottom, I find it works out best if I play just a straight triad, a spread triad like that. So my voicings for F7 probably go something like this. Or that one hasn't even got the tritone in it, for instance, on the other strings. So again, you know, I might not necessarily include the root on that one. Like that, and then the next one would be, which is also the same as the minor 6th, right? So there's all kinds of ways you can use these and extend them. And I think they're great. Even in the simplest form, you know, there's a lot of potential. And I think in combination with, you know, open voice triads, which sometimes, depending on the chord, they can actually resemble, there's a lot. You know, I mean, a lot of that stuff is kind of my bread and butter, especially when I'm playing like more kind of, you know, just sort of with a high sounding instrument like an alto sax or something, or, you know, perhaps with a violin or something. It's kind of good to stay out of the way, or with another guitar where the guitar obviously has probably most of the time quite a similar sound to you, so you want to avoid their register to make sure that they can be heard, you know. I find these voicings really helpful. Anyway, I mean, I hope you appreciate there's a lot that can be done with them. Finally, Jordan Clemens, who I mentioned quite a lot on this channel, uses shells in addition to, you know, upper extension. So, for instance, you might want to put a, I don't know, let's see, you know, like a B triad on top of a G7 chord or something, which is quite hard to do. Oh, the last thing, sorry, I forgot to mention, you can actually just simplify these things down to thirds and sevenths as well. You don't necessarily have to play the whole chord. You know, sometimes that can be enough to suggest the chord progression. I'm just playing like literally just the D string and the E string there. So you can simplify them down further and get quite a lot out of it. One point which I might have glossed over in the video is just why we use two different voicings. So why we use that voicing and not that. I mean, that is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's basically the same shape transported up the string. It's really just purely for reasons of voice leading. Also, you might feel that that chord can get a bit muddy low on the guitar. You know, so it might not necessarily suit the sound of the instrument so much to play it there. But there's nothing wrong with that. That would also be a shell voicing. Add with this, as would this, which is, you know, a variation of that shape, only taking into account the dear old B string, which is always distorting shapes. Anyway, I think that's probably enough to go on. Post any comments you got below. Thanks for watching. Bye.